Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why do I keep ending up in the same painful situations? Why do I fall into toxic relationships, procrastinate just when things are going well, or sabotage opportunities I've worked so hard for? Is it really just bad luck? Or could it be something deeper, something within you? Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, believed that humans are not always driven by a desire for happiness. Strange, right? We tend to assume that everyone wants to feel good. But Freud said, not always. Sometimes, we are driven by the need to repeat familiar pain. He called it the repetition compulsion, a psychological loop where we recreate old wounds over and over again, even if it hurts, even if we hate it. Now, this might sound crazy. Why would anyone want to suffer? But think about it like this. If your earliest emotional experiences were filled with chaos, fear, or rejection, that becomes your emotional home. The pain is familiar. It's predictable. And what's predictable often feels safe. So when life gets too peaceful, too easy, something deep in your subconscious starts whispering, "This isn't right." And boom, you self-sabotage. You ruin the relationship. You ghost the opportunity. You fall back into the pain that feels like home. You don't do it because you want to suffer. You do it because suffering feels like you. This video isn't just about Freud. It's about you. Why you might be addicted to suffering. And more importantly, how to stop. Let's go deeper. Part 1. The pleasure principle, and why it breaks down, approximate 1,000 words. Freud's theories often revolved around conflict, the battle between what we want and what we're allowed to want. One of his most famous ideas is the pleasure principle. This is the idea that human beings, at our core, are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. Sounds logical, right? When we're hungry, we eat. When we're cold, we seek warmth. When we're in pain, we want relief. But here's the catch. Somewhere along the line, many of us begin to associate pain with relief. Let me explain. Imagine a child growing up in a household where love is conditional. They are only praised when they achieve, only hugged when they behave, or worse, ignored altogether unless they're in trouble. In such a case, emotional pain becomes a signal of connection, of being seen. So that child grows up into an adult who unconsciously believes, if I'm suffering, then at least I'm worthy of attention. At least I matter. And the pleasure principle, this basic drive to seek comfort, gets hijacked. It's like the brain rewires itself. Instead of saying, pleasure equals good, it starts saying, familiar equals good. Even if familiar is toxic. This is where the second part of Freud's theory comes in. A concept he struggled with later in his life. One he called thanatos, the death drive. Where eros, the life drive, pushes us toward growth, creativity, and love. Thanatos draws us back toward destruction, chaos, and endings. In other words, part of us wants to heal, but another part wants to break. And that part is patient. It waits for the perfect moment. Right when things get better, it whispers, "You don't deserve this." And the spiral begins. If you've ever had moments in life where you were doing well, only to find yourself crashing, isolating, or starting fights out of nowhere, you've felt the death drive in action. Freud didn't say this to scare you. He said it to free you. Because when you become aware of these forces, you gain power over them. And that's where we head next. Part 2. The repetition compulsion. Why you keep going back, approximate 1,000 words. Freud noticed something strange in his patients. Even when they understood the roots of their trauma, even when they could name the moment their heart broke or their trust was shattered, they kept repeating the same behaviors. They'd leave therapy and walk right back into the same kinds of relationships. The same self-defeating patterns. The same emotional traps. Freud called this the repetition compulsion, a subconscious urge to re-experience unresolved pain. But why? Because the mind is obsessed with mastery. And if you went through something traumatic or painful that you didn't fully understand, your brain keeps trying to recreate the situation, hoping this time you'll fix it. That's why someone abandoned as a child might find themselves in relationship after relationship with distant or emotionally unavailable partners. It's not random. It's the psyche saying, if I can make this person stay, maybe I'll prove I'm worthy of love. It's like emotional time travel. You go back to the scene of the crime, not to relive it, but to rewrite it. Only you can't. Not like that. Because you're acting from the same wound. This is how suffering becomes addictive. Because every time you go back to it, there's a tiny voice saying, maybe this time it'll be different. It's the emotional equivalent of pulling the lever on a slot machine. But Freud wasn't entirely hopeless. He believed that once a person became aware of the repetition, once they could see the cycle clearly, they could begin to break it. Awareness is the first step, but not the last. Because even if you understand your pain, you still have to decide, who am I if I stop suffering? That question scares more people than they're willing to admit. Because freedom comes with responsibility. And healing means letting go of the identity you built around your wounds. It's hard, but it's possible. And here's how. Part 3. How to break the addiction to suffering. Approximate 1,000 words. Freud gave us the map, but modern psychology helps us walk the path. So how do you begin to heal? To truly break the pattern of suffering? Here are a few powerful steps that combine Freud's insights with today's tools. 1. Recognize the pattern. Write down recurring emotional situations in your life. Not just the facts, but the feelings. What do you consistently feel in your romantic relationships? In your job? With friends? If the answer is abandoned, invisible, not enough, that's your emotional script. That's the loop. Awareness isn't just intellectual, it's embodied. You have to feel it. 2. Separate familiar from safe. The hardest part of healing is understanding that what feels normal isn't necessarily healthy. Just because a certain kind of pain feels like home doesn't mean you belong there. This might mean distancing yourself from people who trigger old wounds, or changing how you talk to yourself. It might mean sitting in silence instead of chasing drama, letting peace feel boring until it feels beautiful. 3. Reparent yourself. This is a concept rooted in inner child work. You begin to give yourself the love, protection, and validation you didn't receive growing up. It sounds cheesy, but it's real. That voice inside you that says, you're a failure, or you don't deserve love. It's not your voice. It's someone else's. A parent, a teacher, an early heartbreak. You get to override it. Write new scripts. Speak to yourself kindly. Learn to hold yourself through hard emotions, not punish yourself for having them. 4. Create new memories. The brain rewires through repetition. Just like you learn pain, you can learn peace. Try new things. Form healthy relationships. Take small risks that lead to joy, not suffering. Celebrate progress, even if it's slow. The more your brain learns that joy is safe, the more it will choose it. 5. Seek support. Freud had one thing absolutely right: the unconscious is powerful. But you don't have to fight it alone. Therapy, coaching, group work, even books and communities, these are mirrors. They help you see what you can't see alone. And remember, healing doesn't mean being happy all the time. It means being able to choose differently, even when old pain knocks on the door. If you've made it this far, know this: you are not broken. You are repeating what once kept you safe. But you don't need it anymore. You don't have to earn your worth through pain. You don't have to suffer to feel alive. There is a you beyond the trauma, beyond the cycle. Freud may have uncovered the shadow within us. But you get to decide how much light you let in. Choose peace. Even if it's uncomfortable at first. Even if it feels foreign. Because that, in itself, is healing.